The chamber of the Galactic Council was bright with golden light, its walls made of living crystal that hummed softly. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in curved rows, their eyes fixed on the central platform. Ratha, the archivist of lost civilizations, stood there with a strange expression. He was a tall, thin being with silver scales that shimmered in the light. His voice was calm, but there was something in his tone that made the room lean forward. For centuries, he said, humans had been gone. No signals, no ships, no trace in the star lanes. Many in the council had long called them a myth, a short-lived species that had burned brightly and then vanished forever. But Rether had found something in the deep archives, and it had arrived just 3 days ago. He touched a control on his wrist, and the sound filled the chamber. It was short, was sharp. Only 2 words. The voice was deep, human, and carried a weight no one could quite explain. Do not disturb. The words hung in the air, as if they had a life of their own. A ripple of quiet laughter passed through the room. Some said it was just an old recording, maybe a fragment of some ancient human broadcast, drifting for centuries before reaching them. Others dismissed it as static shaped into words by accident. The head of the council, a broad-shouldered reptilian, called Chancellor Dravik, smiled with his many teeth. If the humans are out there, they hide like prey. We are the hunters. Let us see what they are hiding from. There was a murmur of agreement. Curiosity burned in the council. The humans long thought extinct might still exist was too tempting to ignore. They voted quickly. A small fleet would be sent to the coordinates where the signal had originated. It was a region of space unmarked on star maps, far from trade routes, wrapped in drifting clouds of dust. The fleet departed within the day. 5 warships, fast and heavily armed, their hulls gleaming under the twin suns of the Council's capital system. The journey was quiet at first. They passed through dark sectors where stars seemed faint, as if the light itself was weaker. The ships slowed as they reached the coordinates. There was nothing, no planets, no stations, no ships. Only the dust clouds, thick and strange, moving against the pull of gravity, as if something unseen was pushing them. The fleet commander, Captain Vorin, ordered a scan. Sensors reached out, but the results came back empty. No life signs. No technology. No energy readings then. The first strange thing happened. One of the escort ships reported movement, a shadow sliding through the dust. It was gone before anyone could confirm it. A moment later, another shadow passed by, but the scanners saw nothing. Vorin ordered the fleet to hold position. The dust around them began to swirl faster, wrapping the ships in a thick fog. Then, without warning, all comm channels came alive with static. Through the noise, a single deep voice spoke. You were warned. The signal cut. The fleet turned. To retreat? Engines roared to life, but the ships barely moved. Every system showed full power, yet they drifted like stones in water. The shadows in the dust grew larger, sharper. They were shapes now, long, thin, with edges that seemed to vanish into the fog. Something massive passed just above the flagship, blocking out the faint light of distant stars. The crew stared at the screens, trying to understand what they were seeing. Then the nearest ship vanished from the radar. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. The escorts opened fire into the dust. Bright streams of energy cutting through the fog, but the beams hit nothing. A second ship disappeared. Then a third. Alarms screamed on the flagship. The comms erupted in shouting voices calling for help, reporting strange boarding signals, and then breaking into panicked screams. The sound tore through the bridge, echoing in every corner of the ship. The last thing the council received from the fleet was a high-pitched scream, sharp and short. Before the transmission ended with a hollow click, back in the council chamber, silence fell. No one moved, no one spoke. The Chancellor's smile was gone. For a long moment, only the hum of the crystal walls could be heard. The fleet had been among the best in the Council's navy, and they had been erased without a single trace. Rather stood on the platform again, his silver scales darkened under the light. I told you, he said softly, though no one had asked him anything. Do not disturb. Some in the chamber wanted to send more ships immediately, convinced that whatever destroyed the fleet could be caught or studied. Others whispered that humans had never been gone at all, that they had simply gone somewhere the galaxy could not follow, and now they were back. But no one dared say it too loudly. Outside the crystal walls, the great city of the capital world shone as it always had. Yet somewhere in the cold shadows beyond known space, something had stirred, and it had just given the galaxy its first warning. The Council marked the coordinates as a restricted zone, drawing a red circle on every star map and naming it the Unmarked Zone. Officially, they said it was for safety, a region where unknown dangers lurked. Unofficially, no one wanted to admit what they feared, that something, or someone, had destroyed the fleet with ease. Still, the galaxy was restless. Traders whispered in shadowed spaceports, speaking of human ghosts, guarding their forgotten worlds. Smugglers claimed to have seen shapes in the dust, moving faster than any known ship. The more the Council tried to keep it quiet, the louder the rumors grew. 3 weeks after the fleet's disappearance, a lone cargo vessel drifted back into known space. It had left on a routine supply run, but had gone silent halfway through its route. The Council's patrol ships intercepted it, expecting pirates or malfunction. Instead, they found something stranger. The ship's engines were cold, its navigation systems locked in loops, and the crew gone. Every cabin, every corridor was empty. There were no signs of struggle, no damage to the hull, and no escape pods missing. The only marks were strange. Symbols carved into the metal walls, deep and precise, as if made by a blade sharper than light. The Council's historians confirmed them. They were human letters. Rather was called to examine the ship. He ran his scaled fingers over the carvings, tracing the shapes slowly. The message was short, like the one they had received before. It read, "Go back." His eyes narrowed. "They are not warning us for their safety," he murmured. "They are warning us for ours." His words spread through the Council chambers like a cold wind, but few listened. Curiosity burned brighter than fear. Several powerful species began sending their own scouts into the unmarked zone. None returned. Their last transmissions were always the same: static, faint voices, and sometimes a flash of movement on the visual feeds, dark, long shapes gliding. Past, the disappearances began to make the trade routes shift away from the region, but still, someone always tried again. And every time, the unmarked zone swallowed them. One evening, in the capital's central docking ring, a battered trader ship landed without warning. Its hull was scorched, its stabilizers failing, and it had no flight plan filed. The pilot stumbled out, eyes wide and unfocused, muttering the same words over and over. "They're still here. They've always been here," then pressed. The pilot described a planet hidden in the darkness of the zone, its skies black even in daylight. He spoke of enormous towers rising from the surface, each one humming like a living thing. And in orbit, silent ships, human ships, watching. The Council gathered again in the great chamber. Tension filled the air like smoke. "Chancellor." Dravik slammed his clawed hand against the table. "Enough fear," he growled. "We will find this planet. We will uncover the truth." Rether leaned forward, his voice low. "You will uncover more than you want to see." The Chancellor ignored him. Within hours, a new expedition was planned. This time, it would be larger. Not 5 ships, but 20. 10 warships, 5 research vessels, and 5 carriers loaded with drones. They would enter the unmarked zone, find the human world, and prove once and for all who ruled the galaxy. Across the stars, preparations began. Engines roared in dry docks, weapons were polished, and crews were briefed on a mission that promised glory. But in the dark edges of the galaxy, where the dust swirled in unnatural currents, unseen eyes were already watching. Far from the Council's capital, in a place no map dared name, a signal passed between massive black ships resting in the shadows. The message was simple, sent in a voice that had not been heard for centuries. They are coming. The 20 ships of the Council's expedition cut through the starless dark like knives, their hulls gleaming faintly against the swirling clouds of the unmarked zone. At the head of the fleet, Chancellor Dravik stood on the bridge of the flagship, valiant spear, his eyes locked on the endless void ahead. Around him, the crew worked in silence, every one of them aware of the stories, the screams, the vanishing ships, the warnings. But orders were orders, and Dravok's confidence left little room for doubt. The further they moved in, the thicker. The dust became... It didn't drift naturally like in other sectors. Here it twisted and coiled as if alive, parting only enough to let the ships pass. Scanners returned almost nothing, as if the entire region were swallowing their signals. The warships activated their drone escorts, sending hundreds of small machines darting into the mist ahead. For a while, everything was quiet. Then one by one, the drone feeds went black. No explosions, no warning, just gone. Hours later, a faint glow appeared in the distance, a pale, light like moonlight breaking through heavy clouds. As they drew closer, shapes began to rise out of the darkness. They were enormous towers, so tall their peaks vanished into the black sky. The fleet slowed, scanning them, but the structures gave off no readable energy. They seemed dead, abandoned. Dravok ordered the fleet to orbit the planet below. The world was strange, no oceans, no green, just endless plains of black stone and deep canyons that seemed to pulse faintly under the light. The towers were everywhere, scattered across continents, each carved with the same sharp human letters the Council had seen on the ghost ship. But these words were far older, weathered by time. Rether, standing in the research vessel Truthseeker, felt a chill as he translated the markings. Here we wait. The moment the fleet locked into orbit, every tower on the planet came alive. Lines of blinding white light shot up their sides, racing toward the peaks. The hum began, deep, mechanical, powerful enough to shake the hulls of the ships above. The fleet's coms erupted in static, and then a voice spoke across every channel at once. It was human, cold, and unhurried. You ignored the warning. From the blackness of space, they emerged. Ships unlike anything in the galaxy. Massive, sharp-edged and silent, their hulls drinking in the starlight. They moved without engine trails, without heat signatures, gliding through the void like predators through deep water. Each was larger than the Council's biggest battleship, and there were dozens of them. They formed a perfect circle around, the fleet closing off every escape path. Dravik barked for all weapons to be armed. But before a single shot was fired, the human ships lit up with a strange blue glow. Energy waves rippled outward, passing harmlessly through the Council vessels, or so it seemed. Then the fleet's systems began to die. Shields collapsed, engines stalled, weapons froze mid-charge. The crews shouted in panic as their ships drifted, powerless. A single human ship moved forward, its hull marked with an ancient Earth emblem no alien could understand. The voice returned, stronger now, as if speaking directly into the minds of everyone in the fleet. We left for peace. We built in silence. But you would not let us rest. On the flagship's view screen, a figure appeared, a human in a dark uniform, eyes cold as the void. You are here because you think you control the galaxy, he said. You will leave knowing you control nothing. The human fleet didn't fire. They didn't need to. The message was clear. The Council had stumbled into something far beyond their reach, and whatever was about to happen next would decide whether they left alive at all. The human ships held their silent formation. The Council fleet trapped in the center like prey in a steel cage. On the flagship Valiant Spear, Chancellor Dravik stood frozen, his claws tightening on the armrest of his command chair. Across the view screen, the human commander's gaze never wavered. The man's voice was calm, yet it carried the weight of something ancient and unbreakable. You have entered restricted space, the human said. You ignored the first warning. You ignored the second. The protocol is now active. His tone was not a threat. It was a statement, final and cold. No one on the bridge understood what the protocol meant. Not yet. And then the planet below changed. The black towers, now blazing with white light, began firing beams straight into the sky. The beams linked together, forming a vast lattice above the planet. The dust clouds that had cloaked the zone for centuries began to move as if guided by unseen hands, curling into massive spirals. The airless silence of space was broken by a deep vibration that rattled through every hull. On the Truth Seeker, Rethar's scales prickled. He had read about such systems only in forbidden archives. Automated war machines built to defend entire star systems. But the human version was far beyond anything he had imagined. It's not just a shield, he whispered to himself. It's a trap. One by one, the Council ships tried to break formation, forcing their engines to life. They moved for seconds before invisible pulses slammed into them, shutting everything down again. The human ships did not fire a single weapon. Instead, they released thousands of small black drones, each no larger than a fighter craft. They spread out, attaching themselves to the Council vessels like swarms of insects. Within moments, weapons were dismantled, targeting systems wiped clean. And engine cores locked beyond restart. Panic spread across the fleet. Dravik slammed his fist into the console. Enough. You will release my ship's human, or I will. The man on the screen tilted his head, almost amused. You will do nothing, he said simply. For centuries, we were hunted, feared, and forced into wars we never wanted. We left to build a place where no one could touch us, and you walked straight in. A sudden burst of static filled every channel, followed by another human voice, this one automated, mechanical, and utterly without emotion. Protocol active. Foreign vessels will be neutralized. Countdown. 3 minutes. Rethar's eyes widened. This wasn't a bluff. Humans weren't negotiating anymore. The protocol was an automated defense. Once started, even the humans themselves might not stop it. The drones on the Council ships began to glow with an eerie blue light, their shapes shifting as they prepared to disassemble the ships entirely. Dravok's confident tone was gone. Commander, wait. We came for knowledge, not war. The human stared at him for a long moment, then spoke. Knowledge is earned, not taken, and you have taken too much already. All around them, the black ships began to move again, slowly tightening their circle, their vast holes blotting out what little light filtered through the dust. The hum from the towers below grew louder, vibrating through metal and bone alike. The countdown continued. 2 minutes. 90 seconds. The Council fleet had never been so powerless. For the first time in living memory, they were not the ones in control. And as the timer ticked down, it became painfully clear that survival was no longer in their hands. It was in the hands of the very species they had thought extinct. The final seconds of the countdown echoed across every Council ship, each number a cold hammer striking the hearts of the crews. On the Valiant Spear, Chancellor Dravik could hear the breathing of his officers, sharp, shallow, and desperate. 90 ships' worth of pride, weapons, and power meant nothing now. They were surrounded by predators who didn't even need to bare their teeth to win. Then, at the mark of 0, the hum from the planet below cut off. The white beams from the towers faded into darkness. For a heartbeat, the void was silent. Then, the human drones moved. They worked with terrifying precision, swarming over the Council fleet like a tide. They did not destroy. Instead, they dismantled. Weapons were pulled apart, piece by piece. Shield generators were gutted. Engines were reduced to cold, lifeless shells. Every targeting system, every navigation array, every scrap of military technology was stripped away with surgical efficiency. It took minutes, not hours, for the proud warships of the Galactic Council to become little more than floating metal husks. No shots were fired. No one was harmed. But the message was clearer than any explosion. When the last drone detached and returned to the black human ships, the commander's face appeared on the Valiant Spear's view screen once more. His expression was calm, but his voice carried a finality that cut deeper than any threat. We will not rule you. We do not want your worlds. But if you enter our territory again, you will not return. Tell your council. Tell every species. There will be no third warning. The human ships began to vanish into the dust, their massive forms swallowed by the darkness. In moments, only the drifting, powerless Council fleet remained, their lights dim and their engines silent. For hours they floated, till automated rescue crafts from friendly systems arrived to tow them home. When they returned to the capital, the sight of the once mighty fleet, stripped and helpless, sent a shock through the galaxy. Some species demanded revenge, others urged caution. But beneath all the arguments, one truth settled into the minds of everyone who heard the story: the humans had never been gone. They had been watching, building, and waiting. Rather stood alone in the great crystal chamber after the emergency session ended. He looked out at the city beyond, its towers bright under the twin suns. In his mind, he could still hear that deep human voice: "Do not disturb." Somewhere in the unmarked darkness between the stars, humanity had returned to its throne. Not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as something far more dangerous. A force that answered to no one, a shadow that could not be touched. And from that day on, every captain, every soldier, and every council member knew one thing: the galaxy had just been reminded who the apex predators truly were.